Dear friends, William Shakespeare, a renowned English poet and a dramatist, in one of his monologues beautifully acclaims, "All the world's a stage, and all men and women are mere players. They have their exits and entrances, and one man in the time plays many parts." Yes, dear friends, we are all actors and actresses on the stage of world, playing different roles and parts in the journey of our life here on earth. And each role that we play in this stage enhances the beauty of our life. One such actor on the stage of the world we remember every year on the 4th of October is our beloved Saint Francis of Assisi, who is well known and acclaimed as the patron of ecology, the second Christ, the first saint to receive the sacred wounds of Jesus on his body. Francis of Assisi has connected himself so deeply with Jesus, his master, that he profoundly sought to have the gospel of Jesus as the rule and a way of life. As slowly brothers started joining the company of Francis by looking at the way of his life, the number increased gradually, and Francis would teach his brothers to be minors, to be humble, simple. By his life and example, Francis enriched the life of his brothers and the people around him. Francis would say to his brothers, "Preach at all times, use words when necessary." Brothers, so far we have done very little. Let us begin anew. Even the peace prayer attributed to Saint Francis of Assisi also tells us about his life and teaching. Dear friends, today as we remember Saint Francis, he has also taught his brothers the way to accept like the apostle and call out, "Stay with us," to Jesus. May not be the same words, "stay with us," but he himself called unto Jesus to stay with him in different events and episodes of his life. If we go down the memory lane of Francis, Francis wanted to become a knight. And during those days, there were crusades, which mean religious wars. Francis wanted to fight and be a knight. But on the way, he gets sick, and that night, Francis hears a voice speaking to him. "Francis, whom do you want to serve? The master or the servant?" And gradually, Francis replies, "Yes, the master." Then, on almost for 2 years, Francis was wandering in the streets, in the woods and mountains, with that same one search of question, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" It was during these years he constantly asked Jesus to stay with him, to know his will. And few months later, Francis one day visited the chapel of San Damiano, where he heard another voice from the crucifix of San Damiano. While praying after the Mass, the eyes of Jesus were opened, and Francis heard Jesus saying, "Francis, go and repair my church, which you see is falling into ruins." Francis immediately starts recollecting and runs and collects stones and build the chapel of Damiano. But there was a confusion in his mind. Is this what the Lord has called me to do? Should I build the chapel or what? Then slowly his mind is enlightened. He calls on to Jesus to stay with him and then he says the beautiful prayer before the crucifix of San Damiano. Most high, glorious God, enlighten the darkness of my heart. Give me, Lord, a correct faith, a certain hope, a perfect charity, sense and knowledge, so that I may carry out your holy command. And thus, gradually, he comes to the awareness that he has been called to build the people of God. Yet, one day, within, he was walking on the horse in the streets of Assisi. He encounters a leper. The first reaction was to avoid them because of their dirty clothes and wounds. The lepers were considered as outcasts of the society, and Francis within himself, there was a struggle going within, whether to go away or to meet the leper. And from then, within he gets a call to calling out to Jesus, stay with him. And then Francis dismounts from the horse and begins to embrace the leper. He overcame his fear, and he beautifully writes in his testament, the Lord himself led me among the lepers, and what had seemed bitter to me was turned into sweetness of heart. Now, as Francis lived his life, his fame was reaching far beyond, and many heard and saw the life of Saint Francis. The first to join Francis was Bernard of Quintavalle. Francis, before accepting Bernard, he does something remarkable. He tries to find out the will of God for Bernard. In a way, Francis calls unto Jesus to help him to choose or accept his followers. Francis, therefore, opens the Bible 3 times. He gets the same gospel passage again and again for the 3 times. Then he feels that it is God's will, and he welcomes Bernard as his first companion. Even little later, when Francis had many followers whom he lovingly called brothers, there was a time when Saint Francis sent a brother to Saint Clare of Assisi to know God's will regarding what kind of life they should live. Because Clare was praying constantly before the Blessed Sacrament. In a way, Francis calls Jesus to stay with him and draws inspiration from Saint Clare. Thus, Saint Clare sends the message to Francis that he has to live the life of both active and contemplative life. After spending a good example in the world, Francis now wanted to be more closely associated with Jesus. As he was preparing for the feast of Saint Michael, he was on fast for 40 days. And before beginning this fast, again Francis calls his brother Leo to open the Bible and read the passage of Jesus. There was of the Passion of Jesus. Thereon, for 40 days, Francis reflected on the Passion of Jesus. For these 40 days, he called unto Jesus to stay with him, to accompany him. And as a result of his deep and ardent desire for Jesus, a 6-winged seraph appeared to him and imprinted the marks of sacred wounds of Jesus on his body at Mount Laverna. Then even at the last moment of Francis, his love for Jesus was growing deeper and deeper, and therefore at his deathbed, as all his brothers had gathered around him, he says to his brothers, "Brothers, I have done my part. May Christ teach you what you have to do." Francis, in a way, called on his brothers always to call to Jesus, to stay with them, to accompany them as they walk in the footprints of Saint Francis of Assisi. My dear friends, the same Saint Francis of Assisi today also calls each one of us, whether religious or married or any state of life in the church, to call unto Jesus with the same invitation of the apostles, "Stay with us." Whenever we are encountered with confusions and the question arises in our mind, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" Like the apostles, let us all say, "Stay with us." Saint Francis of Assisi also calls us to again and again call Jesus to stay with us, especially during this turbulent and trying times of pandemic. We need Jesus to stay with us now and more than any ever. My dear people of God, today as we remember Saint Francis of Assisi, on behalf of the whole Franciscan family in the Archdiocese of Goa, and especially our younger brothers in formation at St. Francis of Assisi Friary in Kanakona, we would like to wish you a joyful feast of St. Francis of Assisi. May the blessing of St. Francis fill your hearts with all the necessary graces. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He show His face to you and have mercy. May He turn His countenance on you and give you